A new global study is looking at how the coronavirus affects the brain. Researchers right here in San Antonio are working with scientists and doctors from around the world to find out what long-term effects survivors will have to deal with. Eyewitness News reporter Jeremy Baker has more.
An international consortium funded by the Alzheimer's Association will study the effects on the brain and the nervous system. Dementia researchers at UT Health San Antonio were among the first to be a part of the upcoming studies.
I actually landed or was given the responsibility of coordinating this effort from around 30 different countries.
30 or even more countries that will work together to find out if that brain fog so many people report during or recovering from the virus affects the brain long term.
How that may affect their brain, their function, their memory, their thinking, months and years after is still an open question and something that we don't know yet.
The coronavirus enters cells through receptors called ACE2. The highest concentration of those is in the olfactory nerve, which is the part of the brain responsible for the sense of smell. That's why so many infected lose that sense of smell. That olfactory nerve is also connected to the hippocampus, the part of the brain responsible for short-term memory.
We see a breakdown of something called the blood-brain barrier, which is that protective barrier that keeps the bad stuff out of our brain. And when that breaks down, that may also mean that the inflammation response that we're having is able to get into our brain and may have other downstream effects.
We foresaw that this might be a problem precisely because the virus showed early on signs of affinity or ability to affect the brain.
The Alzheimer's Association has resources for caregivers that is needed at this time, especially during the pandemic. We have the link with this story on KENS5.com. Jeremy Baker, KENS 5 Eyewitness News.